It was a humid afternoon in Oakland, 1965, and Bruce Lee had just been challenged. Not by a rival school, not by a street fighter looking for glory, but by a man who believed philosophy was stronger than fists. The kind of man who had never been hit in his life. The Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute sat on Broadway, tucked between a laundromat and a Chinese grocery. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and liniment oil. The wooden floor was scuffed from pivots and footwork drills. Sunlight came through the high windows in dusty beams, lighting the space like a cathedral of movement. Bruce was teaching a small afternoon class. 5 students, all young men who had heard about him through word of mouth. He moved between them quietly, adjusting a stance here, correcting a centerline there. His voice was soft but precise. Don't think about power. Think about economy. If you waste 1 inch, you lose. Then the door opened. The man who entered was tall, maybe 6'2", with the build of someone who spent more time in lecture halls than training halls. He wore slacks and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His name was Thomas Harrington, a doctoral student in philosophy at UC Berkeley, specializing in Eastern thought. He had read the Tao Te Ching in 3 translations. He had written papers on Zen Buddhism and the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action. He had never sparred a day in his life. "Are you Bruce Lee?" Harrington asked. His tone wasn't hostile. It was curious, almost academic. Bruce turned. "I am. I've heard a lot about you. That you teach a kind of practical philosophy." Bruce smiled slightly. "I teach people how to move. Philosophy comes after." Harrington stepped further into the room. The students stopped what they were doing. They could feel the shift in energy, not aggression, but something denser. Expectation. "I disagree," Harrington said. "I think philosophy comes first. I think the mind controls the body, not the other way around. I've studied this for years. Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, the Stoics. I believe a trained mind can overcome an untrained body." Bruce's expression didn't change. "And you want to test that?" "I want to understand it," Harrington said. "If you're willing." Bruce studied him. This wasn't a challenge born of ego or anger. It was something stranger, intellectual arrogance dressed as humility. Harrington genuinely believed that his years of reading and reflection had prepared him for something physical. He thought understanding a concept was the same as embodying it. Bruce nodded once. "Okay." He gestured to the center of the floor. The students moved to the walls, silent. One of them, James Lee, Bruce's close friend and training partner, leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He had seen this before. People came in with theories. They left with experience. Harrington removed his shoes and stepped onto the mat. He stood tall, shoulders back, breathing steady. He had read about stance. He had read about centerline theory and the importance of relaxation. He thought he understood. Bruce stood opposite him, hands at his sides. He wasn't in a fighting stance. He looked like he was waiting for a bus. "You can move however you want," Bruce said. "I won't attack you. I'll just respond." Harrington nodded. He took a breath, centering himself the way the books had taught him. He visualized water flowing. He thought about the concept of Ting Jin, listening energy. He thought about softness overcoming hardness. Then he stepped forward and threw a punch. Before the punch could travel 6 inches, everything stopped. Not literally, but it felt that way. Bruce didn't move his feet. He didn't shift his weight. He simply raised his lead hand, palm open, and placed it against Harrington's extended forearm. Not a block. Not a deflection. Just contact. Harrington felt it immediately. His punch had no destination. The structure he thought he had built, the mental image of his body as a unified system, collapsed the moment Bruce's hand touched him. It was like pushing against a wall that wasn't there, then realizing the wall was inside you. He tried to pull his arm back. Bruce's hand followed. Harrington tried to push forward. Bruce's hand stayed exactly where it was. There was no resistance. No force. Just presence. Harrington's breathing quickened. He could feel his heartbeat in his ears. He had read about this, about sensitivity, about yielding. But reading about water and standing in a river are not the same thing. Bruce looked at him. Not through him. At him. You're thinking, Bruce said quietly. Bruce moved. It wasn't a strike. It wasn't a throw. It was a shift, a quarter step forward with his rear foot as his lead hand pressed gently into Harrington's chest, just below the sternum. The movement took less than a second. Harrington's body left the ground. Not violently. Not dramatically. He simply lifted. His heels came up, his weight moved backward, and before his mind could process what was happening, he was on the floor, flat on his back, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't been hit. He hadn't been hurt. He had been moved, like a door opening, like a book closing. The room was silent. Harrington lay there, blinking. His chest rose and fell. He wasn't in pain. He was in shock. Not because he had been put on the ground, but because he hadn't felt it coming. There had been no warning. No build-up. No aggression. Just a question his body couldn't answer. Bruce extended his hand. Harrington took it. Bruce pulled him to his feet with the same effortless precision he had used to put him down. You understand the words, Bruce said. But you don't live in your body yet. That's not your fault. It just takes time. Harrington stood there, breathing hard, his shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He looked at Bruce, not with anger or shame, but with something deeper. Humility. Real humility. The kind you can't read about. I thought I knew, Harrington said quietly. Knowing is different than being, Bruce replied. You can read about water your whole life. But until you jump in, you're just dry. Bruce didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He turned back to his students and gestured for them to continue their drills. The moment was over. There was no ceremony around it. But James Lee caught Bruce's eye and gave a small nod. He had seen it 100 times. Bruce never humiliated anyone. He just showed them the gap between idea and experience, and then offered to help them cross it. Harrington stood there for a moment longer, then walked slowly to the edge of the mat. He sat down, legs crossed, and watched. For the next hour, he didn't move. He just observed. He watched how Bruce's students moved, not with the fluidity of masters, but with the honesty of beginners. He watched how Bruce corrected them. Gentle, patient, precise. When the class ended, Harrington approached Bruce again. Can I come back? He asked. Bruce looked at him. You want to train? I want to learn, Harrington said. Actually learn. Not just understand. Bruce nodded. Then come back. Harrington did. He trained at the June Fan Institute for the next 8 months. He never became a fighter. He never competed. But he learned to move. He learned to feel. He learned that philosophy without embodiment is just theory. And theory, no matter how elegant, collapses under the weight of reality. Years later, Harrington would finish his doctorate. His dissertation was titled Embodied Knowledge: The Limits of Conceptual Mastery in Eastern Thought. In the acknowledgements, he wrote one line. To Bruce Lee, who taught me that wisdom lives in the body, not the book. This story never made the news. There were no cameras. No journalists. No viral moments. It happened in a small school in Oakland on an ordinary afternoon, and the only people who saw it were 5 students and 1 philosopher who thought he understood Bruce Lee before he met him. But the story survived because Harrington told it. Not as a defeat. Not as a lesson in humility. But as a gift. He told it to his students at Berkeley, where he eventually became a professor. He told it in lectures on phenomenology and embodied cognition. He told it to anyone who believed that intellectual understanding was enough, that you could think your way into mastery without ever doing the work. And every time he told it, he said the same thing. Bruce Lee didn't beat me. He woke me up. Because that's what Bruce did. He didn't fight to prove himself. He didn't teach to build a following. He moved through the world like water through a river, shaping everything he touched, but never forcing it. He believed that martial arts were a language. And like any language, you couldn't learn it by reading the dictionary. You had to speak. You had to stumble. You had to feel the words in your mouth and the silence between them. Thomas Harrington learned that in 8 seconds. He spent the rest of his life trying to teach it. How many things do you think you understand that you've never actually felt?